H. Martin. First of all, concerns at Cirencester, this is a fair comment if you're living in and around Cirencester, is drifting into the future without a clear idea of where it's going. It comes as next week a decision will be made on whether the Chesterton development of more than 2,000 homes should be approved. So if you look at 2,000 homes, how many people, it would see Cirencester's population increase by more than a third. So we're around about 20,000 at the moment. Flip in another 7,000 or 8,000, that kind of sums up what impact it would have. It would, though, include a new school, a medical centre and sports facilities. Mark Smith has the story.
Cirencester has grown enormously over the decades. Old maps show the town covered just 75 hectares back in 1890. Today, its area is 436 hectares, and that could increase by another 120 hectares if the Chesterton development is given the go-ahead next Tuesday. 2,350 homes could be built on farmland owned by the Bathurst estate around a mile west of the centre of Cirencester. 4 years ago, a campaign group called Save Our Cirencester was set up to oppose the proposed development. And while some members do live right next to the site, others, such as Patrick Moylan, live 4 miles away on the other side of town.
I live in a part of the town which has been unspoilt for generations. But I do know that the influx of those number of people and that number of cars will have a huge impact on the town in totality. No question about that. In fact, that's been the nature of most people's concerns about this. Most local people, if you ask them, their immediate reaction will be it's going to ruin the town because the infrastructure isn't there, the traffic and the parking problems will be acute. It will have all sorts of effects on the way that people live their lives at the moment.
Well, I did just that and asked people in and around Cirencester for their thoughts on the proposed development.
Well, it would have the immediate impact of traffic.
Far too many. Just isn't the infrastructure to cope with it.
What kind of impact on Cirencester do you think it could have?
Traffic's bad enough as it is without adding another probably 4,000 cars coming into the town, and there's no parking.
I honestly don't know because I'm not local, but I think it depends on the amount of infrastructure provision that can be provided. Obviously you need a certain number of homes to have the money to provide infrastructure.
The town centre itself is not big enough, and I think I would rather see more smaller developments in some of the villages around. And then that might mean that those villages can also have a big enough population to, for example, have a reasonable bus service or to even own a shop or something in those locations.
Gloucestershire has had big housing estates in the past. At the time of building, Abbeymead was the biggest new housing estate in Europe. North of Bishop's Cleeve is the Homelands development of 1,000 homes over 2 sites. Cooper's Edge at Brockworth has brought us nearly 2,000 new homes, while Kingsway more than 2,500. And there are plenty more to come now the Joint Core Strategy covering Gloucester, Cheltenham and Tewkesbury has been signed off. It won't be long before we see more than 1,000 homes in Innsworth, 1,500 more in Brockworth and 4,000 north of Cheltenham.
Thanks, Mark. So if you think about all of those places, you might have a really keen idea of how this could impact on Cirencester in a positive or a negative way. So the Cotswold MP, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, supports the development and expects it to be approved. Took a couple of questions, but we got there. He's now set up a new steering group to try and get the best from the development.
I do think the District Council needs to be very careful that they get the maximum benefit from this development in terms of affordable housing and car parking, and I'm not sure under current proposals they are. Also, I think that the future of the town needs very careful planning going beyond this development, and that's why I think that the Town Council, the District Council, the County Council, the LEP need to be working very, very closely together.
Let's speak to Mark Prattley. Mark is chairman of Save Our Cirencester. Morning to you, Mark.
Good morning.
You heard the interview with Geoffrey Clifton-Brown there, so we've kind of got to the nub of where he stands on this now. What's your reaction to that interview and how you feel?
I'm not surprised that he backs it. He's going to back the government line for more housing. Of course he is. And we do, at Save Our Cirencester, we recognise the need for more housing. But as you've heard from people that speak on the radio, we're totally against the size of this development.
Right, let's look at the scenario. He's got this steering group now, G1st LEP, leader of the County Council. Let's just assume that they put the infrastructure in first. So let's have a fantasy world here, that there's a school, there's a medical centre, there's sports facilities, there's loads more car parking around Cirencester. If that all went in first, Would you still be against it all?
Still against the size, and you the word you've used there, Mark, fantasy, and it is a fantasy. That's never going to happen to get the infrastructure in place beforehand. It's this whole thing as we go along, the figures, the assessed the need, the objectively assessed need for the houses, 8,100. And we had the meeting back in September where the plan got deferred. Then in November we had the local plan hearings. And it emerged at the local plan hearings, because the inspector asked for figures, that not only did they have the 8,100, they with all the other windfall sites and developed sites, they had the figure there right the way up to March 31. They've got that now.
All right. A couple of quick questions for you. What a number of houses for Cirencester would you find acceptable?
About 1,000.
OK, so about half.
Yeah.
Where else in the vicinity, because we know there's elsewhere in the Cotswolds is a broad area, where else would you put those houses that you don't want in Cirencester?
People want, we've been told, people want some of the housing in the villages and across the Cotswold district. We don't, they don't want to see it all in Cirencester. And Cirencester, let's face it, has had enough building in the past. Kings Hill, Corinium Veer. It's not as if there's been no development. And what worries us is the figures emerge, and with the Chesterton development, the total figures now are 10,504. So we see no need for Chesterton at this point in time.
OK, final point. Next week, isn't it? Tuesday.
Yep.
Do you know, as it seems, that it's going to go through? Geoffrey Clifton-Brown says he's convinced it's going to go through. He knows it's going to. Is it done in your mind? When we come back to this story midweek next week, it's going to get the tick and it's going to happen.
I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't go through.
All right. We will come back to it. I know you have another little different message. We'll do that in just a moment, because I know you've got some people listening you want to address. We'll do that in a moment. Obviously, this is going to be big news next week as well. But there it is. Geoffrey Clifton-Brown has done his survey. He's also got this steering group together. And I did say, have you got it because you know it's going to go through? And he kind of went, yes. OK. Big impact for Cirencester. A story we'll come back to, of course. But if you live in Cirencester, do talk to me about how you feel. Cummings@bbc.co.uk. 8:15, Thursday morning, through the fog and the gloom, hopefully clearing. It should be quite a bright day after